thank you for staying with us. As Mark mentioned earlier, I want to talk about development. And there is this Global Sustainable Development Report, which is a flagship UN document produced every 4 years. And it is prepared from the Office of the UN Secretary General to assess global progress on the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Well, our guest this morning is Dr. Adedoyin Adeleke. He is CEO. He's an environmentalist and CEO of Global Growth Africa. He joins us in the studio. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
I really have a difficulty starting this question, but tell us, first of all, what's the background that you have to this whole idea? You are co-chair of the Independent Group of Scientists. So tell us, what's the background that we should be looking at that could have prepared us for this moment?
Okay, thank you so much. So it's, good morning, Nigerians. So one is that, of course, the world have been assessing development on different metrics over decades and centuries now. But by 20, it was almost based on economic parameters over for decades, And then around year 2000, so whenever the United Nations is working on development and they have a framework, there is the learning curve, which is one of the things I'm part of now. So as part of the lessons they learned is that that led into year 2000 was the fact that everything was almost economic GDP. And we can't say when life expectancy is low, education is not so fantastic, but they are growing in GDP. We cannot say such a nation is holistically developing. That brought in the social pillars of development, social pillar of development, and that brought in issue of, when you look at MDGs, for instance, you have economic and social parameters. Now, as of course, over the 15 years of implementation of the MDGs, and you also find that majorly it was interaction with the government and things like that. Now, by the time we moved into 2015, they have learned for 15 years on the implementation of the MDGs. They realized that while we are growing economically, and we are doing well socially as, planet. If we are polluting the environment, we are doing all of this, making all of this progress at the expense of the environment, the negative feedback from the environment could often come to eat up the gains of our social and economic progress. Take, for instance, COVID. COVID, whatever people have a lot of philosophy around it, but it's zoonotic. Bird flu is zoonotic. And zoonotic disease are diseases that are transferred from animals to human beings. And how did that happen? By the encroachment, as we're growing, and then we deforest and all that, we are breaking the natural wall, the invisible wall between humanity and nature.
Now, my apologies.
Thank you.
Let's go straight into how these things connect with the people. Many times when we talk about these issues of sustainable development, millennium development, we could go all academic. How did Nigeria perform in the MDGs before we got into SDGs and all? But my question, perhaps particularly around the environment, is always the awareness of people. Is always whether or not people even understand what this whole conversation about the environment is. And unfortunately, most of the environmental issues we talk about are more in the rural areas than the urban, centers, because we seem to have cannibalized all of the natural, order of things in the urban centers. So we have more plastered areas as opposed to, grassy nature and all of those things. How well would you say Nigeria is communicating the challenges or peculiarity of the environment to its people, particularly in suburban and the rural areas of the country?
Well, it's quite dicey to give a specific response in terms of level and all that. But I know, one, I think that the government needs to do more on that, certainly. Many people, even people in government, you talk about rural communities, you'll be surprised that people in urban centers don't even know anything about some of these things at all, and the implication and the connection to their lives. Because overall, we're not in love and we're not passionate about the environment because of the environment. We're passionate about the environment because of ourselves. I was living in a city where 900 people were dying daily for 1 week during COVID-19. you know. So when the flood thing happened in Maiduguri, it wasn't the environment that just suffered. Lives were lost, billions were lost. So we must give kudos to non-profit organizations and CSOs. CSOs are doing quite well, and must commend international partners that are supporting them. But how well is Nigeria as a government, as a nation, and government, and supporting the advocacy, the awareness at rural level is the question, because that really is lagging, sincerely. However, we must commend some private sector. Private sector are stepping in big time to support non-profit organizations now.
Quickly,
on that.
Where are we now based on data, or at least available data, as far as this global sustainable development goals are concerned?
Yeah, I mean, based on data, there are a number of achievements, but there are a number of lessons to learn, areas to build on. Take, for instance, even starting from the data itself. How much of data do we have? What is the integrity of those data we are using for those assessments, number one? But a lot of it, you see, government, I think government has a lot of projects on ground. Of course, more is needed. However, where a lot of the gap, I think a lot of gap lies, is the understanding of our policy and project handlers of those projects and their connection with the SDGs. SDG is not a sector of its own. It's mainstream within works, environment, energy, transport, and all of that. We have a lot of fantastic projects that have been implemented, but how well have they been aligned with the SDGs? So that is where the issue is. I mean, for education, for instance, we're not doing so well. Nigeria has almost about 1/10 of our population out of school. I think a lot needs to be done on that. Energy, we're not so doing well. Nigeria is about 50%, 54% access, electricity access rate, electricity alone. But when you break it down, because oftentimes I wrote an article some time ago, I said, national averages hide more than it reveals. So when you take Nigeria and say, oh, 54%, okay, well, they are average. But when you move to urban centers, you see that about access rate is about 70-something%, and at the rural community is about 20 to 30%. You know, so there's a lot that needs to be done at the rural level. Of course, we must also commend organizations that are supporting energy projects, development partners, energy projects in rural communities. But there's also lack of knowledge on that, because oftentimes, if you are given $1 billion to go and do an energy project in a rural community, for instance, the essence is to facilitate development, right? By the time you put the whole $100 billion on energy, you have used the money suboptimally. The reason is this: when we provide electricity access, the idea is to facilitate economic activity, right? So who gives that woman a loan to start a business with electricity? Who goes to school to buy computers for those children? Who buy electrical facility and machine to the hospital that already have electricity access now? So there are a lot of gaps, and that's where I think that the first thing, apart from data, the next thing that policy handlers need to understand is the synergies and trade-offs between the SDGs.
I thought that one of the major issues of the SDGs is partnership, because I saw that partnership is a major component in the MDGs, and it is also in the SDGs.
Number 17.
I believe that Malcolm, my colleague, will want to take you on some specific questions, but so let her be the one to ask you that question. Malcolm, go ahead.
So it's good to have our guests in the studio with you. I wanted to take you up on the visual we saw earlier, which is one of the experiments that you have carried out in your own area as an environmentalist. You know, the solutions to plastic. We're seeing more and more these days people collecting plastic. It has become quite valuable. Yes, in some areas, you know, people's dustbins are not even allowed to rest in peace because people are looking for this plastic. It's unfortunate that we're not yet in a climate where it is collected separately from the rest of, you know, household or, well, let's say, communal waste, as the case might be. What precisely were you trying to prove with this experiment, and how wide-scale do you think this can be deployed, given the fact that a lot of, you know, urban areas in our country right now are currently facing the problem with plastic pollution?
Africa, which is the organization I sit on as the executive director. And what we do at Green Growth Africa is it's 3 pillars, basically, sector decarbonization, nature-based solution, environmental justice. But this particular project was done within sector decarbonization. What are we saying? Basically, we're looking at how, when we talk about pollution and the environmental problems, and then we're trying to deploy solutions, and these solutions are separate from the problems. We're not solving the problems. So the sectors that are high polluting, our interest is to target them and see how we can make them less carbon intensive. Now, we've done a lot of things around health, where we make menstruation pads from sugarcane waste and all of that, and so many other projects like that. But particular to this building, we wanted to decarbonize, demonstrate how to decarbonize the building and construction industry. And in the building and construction industry, cement is the most carbon-intensive product. Many people are not aware because the carbon emission does not happen at the point of use. It's at the point of production and transport. Now, anything you do to be able to reduce the volume of cement in construction, then you are reducing the carbon intensity of the building and the carbon footprint, which makes it more green. And that was the whole intention. For that building that you saw, we did not use cement for block because no block was used at all. And then we did not use cement for binding materials. And on the other hand, we also took a lot of plastic, about over 27,333 waste plastic bottles were taken away from the streets. So the intention was to demonstrate how to decarbonize. And what does that do, for instance? Now, in this building is bulletproof, at least the brick part, not the windows, because the windows are the normal windows and the doors. Bulletproof, fireproof, and earthquake-proof, and these are scientifically proven. And in terms of the scale, and in terms of the economics, now, when we implemented this project, at the time, the Ibadan, we couldn't, because the building is in Ibadan, because there were no aggregation of waste plastic bottles, the economies of aggregation make the building more expensive, and also in terms of human capital. While we have the knowledge, but the masons that were to work with us, we could only get only a few of them in the country, and we had to hire them from the north. So that made the price a bit more expensive. But if the waste plastic bottle aggregation was sorted, which is now at improved stage now, at least in Lagos and Ibadan, for instance, and then if we're able to train people to have this capacity, I can tell you that the cost of making this kind of building is 50% of what conventional building with using sandcrete blocks will cost, actually. And it can be deployed for any kind of building. Well, actually, we have a program where we're trying to deploy it. We want to build one in Abuja.
Well, I want to believe, my apologies, I want to believe that the NOAs will be very much interested in this. So this sounds to me like one of those Nigeria Happens to Me initiatives. There's a lot to say about this matter, and let's just say that this is one of those many conversations we'll be having. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Dr. Adedoyin Adeleke is an environmentalist and CEO of Green Growth Africa. We sincerely appreciate it. We haven't even been able to look at the report itself, but we have looked a lot more about the impact and what the people can do. Thank you.
It's great, actually, because we are currently reviewing the past reports as we build on it. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
That's the show this morning.